Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roker Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav back ahead of the QPR game after the international break. We've had a couple of weeks off from Sunderland, unfortunately, because after winning 5-0 you don't really want a 2-week break, but here we are, just ahead of another game, and joining me is Chris, as always. Hello mate.
Don't get me started on this international break.
You're not a fan of the Moyers. Anyone who read the editorial this week will have witnessed you're not a fan of these international breaks. But did you not enjoy the England-Scotland game at least a little bit?
To be fair, that was more like a club game, wasn't it? You know, like actually people made tackles and passed the ball.
Because it was at Hampden, there was a better atmosphere. If it had been at Wembley, I probably wouldn't have been as arsed, but...
Oh, yeah, it's funny. You know, I love it when they kind of belt out Flower of Scotland and then, you know, half an hour later they're all crying and it's, it's good fun, isn't it?
Well, I watched it in a pub just where I live, and one of the blokes in the pub was Scottish, and I was saying to him, do you not think they get a bit too het up in those early stages in the anthems and all the rest of it? Because everyone's belting the national anthem out, and then there's just the completely devoid of energy after that. It felt like they'd given it all in the anthems.
It always reminds me, there was a famous clip of Alan Brazil on TalkSport years ago, absolutely hammered at Hampden, belting out Flower of Scotland. But I know what you mean. They just seem to like blow their beans before kickoff, didn't they?
Yeah, a bit like us every time we went to Wembley, apart from the last time we went to Wembley.
But we do it the night before.
That's what I mean, getting pissed up at Trafalgar the night before and then turn up on the day and not having anything left to give. Anyways, we're completely diverting off the topic here. We're back because Sunderland are playing Queen's Park Rangers in the league. It feels like it should be a game we should win, because on paper, you look at it, you think QPR, one of the favourites for relegation, haven't got a great home record, we're a decent away team, we've just came off the back of a good win. We now have lots of options in the squad. So you look at it and you think, well, we should win this. But the problem with the Championship is that whenever you have these games where you feel like you should win, more often than not, they can throw up surprises. And QPR did that against Borough in the last game. They beat Borough away. They got another decent result against Cardiff. But, you know, on paper, is this one we should win, do you think?
I don't know. I'm slightly worried about this one, and I shouldn't be really. I remember thinking just before the season kicked off that I was absolutely certain that QPR were going to be one of the whipping boys. I thought they were. I mean, looking at the table, I genuinely thought that's, you know, QPR were going to be where Middlesbrough are now. I thought they were just going to be rock bottom. I thought Ainsworth would do well to last until Christmas. And I thought as well, after getting smashed on the first day of the season at Watford, I thought they're in massive trouble. But I've looked at kind of how they've done since. And, you know, like you said, they got that good win against Cardiff. They seem to be fairly unlucky to come out with nothing against Ipswich at home. Gave Southampton a run for their money, even though they only had 26% possession at Southampton. But that's Southampton doing their possession thing, keeping the ball for no reason like they tried to do against us. And then they went to Borough and won. And bizarrely, and I'm not sure why, I was trying to look into it, but there must be, I don't know whether there's a reason, but I was looking, they're the only side to have only played one at home yet. So I don't quite get that, why they've only played one at home. And in that, obviously, it was quite close against Ipswich, but the rest of them have been away from home, which is a bit
weird.
odd.
There's got to be a reason for that.
Yeah, I was thinking that, like, Loftus Road was being used for something. I couldn't find out what that was, but yeah. So they've only played one at home. So when you see it talking about their home record this season, it's actually, considering they're on 6 points, and you know that's not the greatest tally in the world, but it keeps them 4 points above the bottom three, and they've had 4 away from home in that time. It's not actually too bad for where I thought QPR were going to be. So the other thing I wanted that makes us a little bit iffy about the fixture is, I mean, going back to Valentine's Day when we played them last away and we won 3-0, and for long periods it was comfortable, but until Luke O'Nien scored that opening goal, we were second best. QPR were the better side until we got that opening goal. And I remember Dizelle playing well against us, and they looked kind of handy, and I know it went a bit wrong for them after that, but and Patterson had to save a penalty as well with 20 minutes to go, and that would have made it 1-1. So even though we did dominate for long periods, it was uncomfortable at times. And I just think we've got a game on our hands this weekend. And I say that because, like I feel like agreeing with what you've just said, where we should win. But at the same time, I just think we've got a game in our hands this week, and we need to be a bit careful.
Yeah, I think, Ainsworth, we know what his teams are going to do. They're going to waste time. They're going to try and kick us up the height. They're going to draw everything out of the game. They're going to try and slow us down, really, aren't they? But I just look at them and I look at the home record. It's not just this season; it stretches into last season. That I read something about their home form. They've lost 12 of the last 16 at home. They've only won 1 in that time, 3 draws, and most of them, I would presume, all of them actually have been under Ainsworth. So I don't know whether his style of football necessarily suits the way they play yet. I don't know, but they're a funny team to look at, because I look at QPR and I think, well, they've got some very functional championship players. You look at them on paper, they've got like the likes of Jack Colback came in the summer, and Steve Cook came in, who's a very experienced defender. They've got a couple of ex-Sunderland lads in there as well. Jake Clark-Salter, who's one that still terrifies me every time I think of him. Jimmy Dunn, who I think I was reading has been injured but could be back for this weekend. So there's a few names in there we're aware of. They've got Asmir Begovic playing in goal for them, who's got a lot of top class experience there, and I know he's a lot older now, but he's for this level, you'd think he should still be able to do it. I was also reading Lyndon Dykes has been injured, but he'll be back at the weekend, and he was poor against us last season, but big physical striker who'll give the defenders a hard game, I'm sure, if they're not at it. And Ilias Cher, who's by far and away their best player, but again, is he somebody who necessarily fits that Ainsworth style of play? Is he trying to shoehorn him into the team? They've got players there which I'm aware of, but I don't look at them and think, they're scary or anything. I just think that, it could be one of those games where it becomes attritional and you get drawn into their way, I guess. And that's what Ainsworth thrives on, doesn't he? He's made a career as a manager of doing that with his teams. And yeah, I think it's a case of, can we go there and play the way we played against Southampton? It's going to be very tough.
Well, they'll let us have the ball, because I was looking at their possession stats from the start of the season. And the 5 games they've played so far, they've had 29%, 35%, 38%, 26%, and 38% possession. So their wins, the win at Borough and the defeat against Ipswich at home, were their highest percentage, kind of in terms of possession stats this season, with 38%. So that is Gareth Ainsworth all over. That's how he plays. They don't really want the ball unless they need to. Unless they absolutely have to. They're happy to let the other side have the ball. And so we're going to see plenty of the ball, which is in theory a good thing, but it comes back to this, and you mentioned this when we talked after the Southampton game, that we like Southampton try to step on us, and that creates space, and we like that. We tend to struggle against the sides who let us have the ball and sit on the edge of the box, and we struggle to break them down sometimes. So that's going to be the game. Whether QPR can stop us from breaking them down, whether they can just sit in, and whether then they can get something to hang on to. So they're going to be looking for that one chance. And you know what Gareth Ainsworth was like? He's going to be waiting for a free kick in the middle of the half. Halfway inside their half, they're going to knock it in, diagonal ball to the back post. Corner, they're going to win a corner, and then they're going to be all over it. So that is going to be the game plan, and that's how the game's going to go. That's going to be the whole, where the game's won. Can we break them down? Can they get on the break? Can they get something to hang on to? Because then they don't even have to step out. They just need to stay on the edge of their box and defend. And he's building a squad to do that. I mean, I looked at the signing of, the Morgan Fox at the back they brought in from Stoke? I think he's that type of player.
The Morgan Fox. He's an experienced but wily player, isn't he? He's very uninspiring. I mean, I'd be good if we signed a player like that. But again, though, you look at their transfer business and it just stinks of Gareth Ainsworth, doesn't it? Callback, Cook, Fox, Begovic, Paul Smith, even going back to QPR, who
Yeah.
is a player who a couple of years, I think he played against us. I'm trying to think who it was for now. It might have been for Wickham or Accrington or somebody like that. But I can remember him at the stadium. I think it was Accrington at the Stadium of Light. Did we draw 2-2 with them? And he had a really good game, and I think Maguire scored for us. It feels like 4 or 5 years ago now, but I remember him having a good game against us at the Stadium of Light. But these are players, when I look at them, and I just think, well, they're just Gareth Ainsworth all over. But I think he sort of made a career out of getting the most out of players who buy into the sort of battling nature that he likes from his teams.
You're right though, but I would hate some of these players to sign for Sunderland. But you look at Gareth Ainsworth, you look at QPR, and you actually think it's a good signing. You just think it fits with what he wants to do. I mean, Jack Colback in the middle, 33 years old, but for QPR, the way they want to play, it's probably a good signing.
He's had a good start, hasn't he? I think he's scored a couple of goals already.
He scored a Borough, didn't he? He scored the second goal at Borough.
And he's going to be well up for it because it's been a while since he played against Sunderland.
Yeah, well, that's it. But they've got some, like you said, Begovic in goal. I thought was a cracking signing. I was amazed they got him to go. I don't know whether he wanted to, whether it was London or what. But
he's quite old now. He hasn't played much in recent years, has he?
Yeah,
he's bounced around different clubs on loan and all the rest of it. And I think at Everton, obviously, he was understudy to Pickford, wasn't he? So he's probably just went there because he wants to play games. 36-year-old, he's probably looking at it and thinking, I've got a couple of years left. I need to be playing football. So, but you're right. He's a very experienced player. He's played 60-odd games for his country. He was, top boy at Stoke for a long time. He played for Chelsea, and then he was the number one at Bournemouth. So, to me, that would be the kind of signing if a low-end Premier League team made that signing. Just as a sort of stopgap goalkeeper, you would say that's a safe pair of hands and a good signing. And, he's a lot older now than he obviously once was when he was playing at the top of his game, but he's definitely still a player, isn't he?
Yeah, and I mentioned it before, but I always like Andre Dizelle when he plays. I always think he's got something about him. I always think he's a half-decent player. I mean, I remember there was a bit of needle in the last one, in the last game at Loftus Road, and it was Dizelle in the middle. He seemed to be all over the shop, and actually for the first, I'm sure it was like first 20 minutes or something, he was kind of running the show a little bit, and we had to, I'm sure 09 stuck one on him, as he normally does when he sees things like that. I think 09 had a cracking game. I think he was man of the match. But yeah, and actually, it's slightly depressing about Andre Dizelle because I remember his dad running rings around us at Roker Park for Ipswich, Jason Dizelle. But yeah, that's slightly depressing. But yeah, I mean, actually, but all this adds up. We're talking, and we're talking about QPR, and I think this is their, again, slightly depressing how long it's been, but it's like their 9th season, I think, down in the Championship, and they've never finished above 9th. So it tells you something about how QPR have been for almost a decade. They've been just stuck in that bottom half of the Championship, but that means, that they've built up this team. We talk about their signings, but that's the team they are. They are they're a Championship team with traditional Championship players. Of just those sloggers, and you say sloggers, but experienced players who actually know what they're doing. They're not world beaters in any way, but actually they're wily. They get the job done, and with game plan like Ainsworth puts out, like I've just described earlier on, where we're going to be having loads of possession right in front of them, it's exactly what they want.
Well, I think you always know what to expect from his teams, and I presume that goes for players that he signs too. That they know what they're walking into when they work with him. So that at least counts for something, doesn't it? When it comes to looking at the overall picture, they'll struggle this year. They will struggle, but I probably fancy them to just stay up ahead of a couple of those teams because, like I say, you know what they stand for. They're going to squeeze out results as the season goes on. They're going to scrape by, and that's where we've stuck in the past. I mean, to me, this is a game, like I say, this is one we've got to win. But at the same time, it's a test of where, sort of our recruitment this summer and where we're at. Because, I mean, you look at the last game we played, Southampton, it would be difficult for Tony Mowbray to drop anybody after that game because of the way that it went. We were just so dominant. And I know, and you mentioned it before, it's a completely different type of game. But I was looking at the squad earlier, and I mean, and this is something we'll probably talk about in a bit, but the depth we've got now, particularly going into this game, because we've got players back from injury, we've got new lads through the door. It's going to be tough for him to even name nine subs for this game. So with that in mind, you look at it and you think, well, he's got to pick the same team. He's got to. Like, if you dropped anybody after the last game, they would have a right to be pissed off. And with that in mind, you look at it and you think, well, what are QPR strengths? They're going to try and time waste. Yes, they're going to let us have the ball. But when they do get their moments, when they get those set pieces, the long throws and all, and the free kicks and the corners, can we deal with that? And now when I look at the team, I feel like we can deal with that. I feel like now we've got Ballard fit, and he's like obviously taking up that role that Danny Bart had last year as the big dominant defender. O'Nine's good in the air. Ekwar's starting to come into his own, and he's physically adept. Bellingham's a big lad. So you're looking around the pitch now and you're thinking, we've got players here who can deal with the physical side of it now. But it's a tough one for Mowbray, isn't it? Because he's not the type of manager who will look at an opponent. He won't be looking at QPR and going, oh, I might bring in Big Hemia because we need extra help on set pieces. I might bring in this player. He's just going to go with the same team and play our way. And, it'll be interesting to see how the game pans out, because he might be made to look a mug for that. But it's going to be hard, isn't it, to try and justify making any changes?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it was interesting because at the start of that, what you said there, your opening sentence, you said, we've got to win at teams like QPR. And this is going to be the difference this season between, I'm not saying success and failure, but it's going to be the difference between those sides who, the automatics and the expectations you have in that top six, between saying, right, we're away from home, we pick up a point, or we're away from home at QPR and we should win this. And that's the difference between where the expectations stand. And I think a lot of us after last season are thinking we should go to teams like this and win. And it's just a natural reaction. QPR are going to be in the bottom half. So if we've got aspirations of finishing that top six, these are the games actually when you go away from home, you think, right, it's not just go away, get a draw this week. It's right, 3 points because we're away at this team. And you're right about Mowbray. We think back to Alex Neil, and I remember that run in League One that led to the playoffs. And I remember after every week, Alex Neil would change it up. He'd hardly ever keep the same 11 or the same. He was the type of manager where every game was a different game plan, and he set up his side looking at the opposition. Where Tony Mowbray, especially with this Sunderland squad that we've got now, is very much, right, we'll do what we do, and we'll do it against whoever we're playing because we think we're good enough to break them down and beat them, basically, the way we set up. And so we don't set up differently. So you're right. I mean, how do you change that? I mean, Barr had that stinker at Coventry when he came in, turned it around, and then if you kind of drop him, and I don't know, the word was before the international break that Roberts might return straight after. But
it wasn't expected to keep him out for very long. So
I haven't seen any updates. So let's assume he's back, just for the sake of argument. I mean, that's a big call to just hook Barr out, but then you've got to find a place on the bench. And if you've got the likes, I mean, I suppose you could take Taylor off the bench, but you've got O'Sheesh who's waiting to get some minutes. You got Burstow, you got Rusyn, and the talk was Mayenda wasn't that far away. I don't know how close he might be to getting into the first team squad. And then you had Rig, who came on and got the goal. I mean, how do you don't take him off the bench because his tail's up. Bennett, he did his 3 pirouettes, hat trick. You don't take him off the bench.
I think the only thing with Bennett is the international.
They're playing in Croatia, aren't they? They're playing against the UAE. They're playing against Man City's owners. So they're playing in Croatia, so he's got to fly back from Croatia.
Yeah. So I always think when you've got people coming back late from internationals and stuff, are they really in consideration? I mean, he did well. I imagine if he comes back fit and well, he will be on the bench because he's obviously earned his place. But
just imagine that he comes back, his tail's up. How much it might knock players like him and Rig if you take them off the bench. Pritchard did well when he came on. And then you've got the delicate situation that is Hamir at the minute. His kind of, you don't want to kind of knock him too much by pulling him off the bench. So you've got you've got potentially, if Mayenda and Roberts are ready for places on the bench, you've got 5 players looking for places on the bench. You've got players who were on the bench who came on who did well, who were going to be expecting to be given another shot. So yeah, it's a strange one, but again, with the way we set up with Dak and Bellingham, yes, it looked good against sides who came at us and gave us that space and gave players like Dak and Bellingham space with the ball. But when you're trying to break teams down, you tend to want players who play off the last man and get in behind and make those little runs in behind. And naturally, Dak and Bellingham want to come to the ball. So, the temptation would be to try and maybe stick Rusyn or Burstow in there and say, well, you're a focal point, or Hamia even. But I think you're right. I mean, it's Tony Mowbray. He's going to go with the same 11.
Yeah, we're sitting trying to pick this apart, and obviously we've got to place the spoiler in. We're recording this before he's done a press conference on the game ahead and all the rest of it. I'm sure he'll have updates on players who've maybe got knocks and who's actually going to be involved and all the rest of it. But as a general thing, it is just nice to have options now. Like, it's a good headache to have, isn't it? Having all of these players, because what it should do, particularly when you think about the age of them. We're not talking about a squad full of players who've been round the block a million times and who maybe don't have that hunger to succeed or prove themselves. We've got a very young team, so all of those players really should be itching to prove themselves and prove their worth and be on the bench, even just fighting and battling and clawing just to be on the bench. And I don't know if you saw the video the club put out. It was showing Rusyn and Burstow and all the rest of them training, and they were sliding into tackles and five-a-sides, trying to win the ball. Rusyn, I think it was Burstow, tried to slide and tackle on Rusyn, then Rusyn, the ball escaped from him, and he slides in just to try and get the goal. And the club commented something along the lines of determination to get the ball or whatever. But that's the kind of intensity that you want. You want players coming in straight away, up in the intensity, like Burstow and Rusyn and Oshish and Pembele when he's fit enough to take part, and Mayenda when he's involved, and all these players. You want them in training, playing at full pelt, giving it the role, because apparently that's what Rig does and has been doing for a while now, which is what got him noticed. Yeah, I think Mowbray said he's got no respect for the senior pros. He just, he gets stuck into them. But that's what you want, because that means going into the games on a weekend, everybody's gave it their all to get in the team. And if you don't, you're not going to be here very long. You're going to get found out. And that can only be a good thing, can't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, you're remembering these players are coming onto a training pitch full of players who are on the up. I mean, we're unbeaten in 3, just on the back of a 5-0 win. So, I mean, they have kind of joined in with these training sessions that are probably going 100 miles an hour anyway. So they're probably taking the lead off the rest of the players, because the rest of the players are stepping it up now because they've seen the competition for places, and there was competition for places anyway, even if we had kind of a fairly thin squad, because there was, you saw who came on. I mentioned earlier on who came on against Southampton and were pushing the players who were already on the pitch. Rig, Bennett, Pritchard, Hamia all looked kind of sharp when they came on. Hamia had that shot. I know he had that chance. He should have scored. That would have been the icing on the cake, but wasn't to be. But you look at the impact Bennett and Rig had for that last goal. So they were already pushing, and then you've got the new lads, and I know a few of them were in the crowd, weren't there? A few of them were in the stadium, watching a 5-0. So they'll have seen that, thinking, bloody hell, how do I get in this side? So it's just a squad that's got their tails up. But you talked about their age, and in terms of the impact of wins, and we talked about after the Southampton game that Mowbray was trying to keep their feet on the ground and at half time and all this sort of stuff. But the opposite is true as well, that Tony Mowbray's got one hell of a job on when he's actually got to drop some of these lads. Because you're talking 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, they're desperate for games and they've been playing well. Mowbray's got to have a good reason to take them out, because otherwise, you can really lose a player, a young lad, if you don't kind of get it right on the kind of mental side of things. If you don't approach it right, a player can react badly, or you might just, he might have no faith in the manager if he drops him for no reason. So Tony Mowbray's got to be careful on that side, that he's got a bunch of young lads and they've got to be prepared to miss out a few games now and then. Now, like I said, if let's say Barr gets dropped after that performance, he had a say in 3 of the goals, I think, and Roberts comes straight in. Well, his chin's going to hit the floor, isn't it? Yeah. Unless Mowbray kind of explains it and says this is the deal. And interesting, actually, I was looking at the 3-0 win at QPR, and Barr started in that game last season. So I don't know whether he came off with about 20 minutes to go. So yeah, so you could look at it both ways, that the tails are up and all this sort of stuff. But Mowbray's got a job on his hands to bring those in. I mean, I was even looking at there's been talk Pembele is still getting back to fitness, so he's not going to be available for selection for a while. But let's say he was fully fit and he was raring to go and he'd been involved in training this week. Huggins was on the bench in the last game. So what you're going to do? Are you going to take Huggins straight out, and then what's that going to do to Huggins? Because he's needing minutes, he wants fitness, he wants to get back involved. So we were talking a couple of weeks ago that Mowbray is struggling to pick a team and all this sort of stuff, and now you look all over the pitch and he's got headaches in every single position.
Yeah, the players who start against Southampton, if let's say they're all fit and ready to go and all the rest of it, they get an hour at least to prove why they should be in the team again. And, going forward, we see where we go from there. It's just having those options. That's the main thing for me, is that now it doesn't matter whether we win, lose or draw, whether people get injured, whether there's suspensions, and all these things are going to happen. We have the options and the players and the versatility across the board now to mix it up a little bit when we need to. And that can only be a good thing. In terms of this game, though, like we say, probably going to be the same team barring any issues between now and kick-off. How would you see it going? Because I know we've talked about, it's probably going to be a case of them letting us have the ball, them, if they do get their moments, probably taking them on set pieces and all the rest of it, and being about how much we can deal with that. But if I've got to pin you down for a sort of prediction of how things are going to run in the game, what do you see? Because obviously I'll save mine for a minute, but yeah, I think this could be another big result for us. Yeah. Either way.
I was just thinking, just as long as we don't have another goalkeeper howler where it bounces over his head like it did with Jason Steele. Back
or they keep scoring like in the home version of this game last year. Around about this time, wasn't it? I think when they're at the stadium when their keeper scored.
Shocking. But I mean, I was thinking about this, and I can see it going a similar way, fingers crossed, to the last time we played there, where I think QPR are going to be up for it. They're going to be doing the Ainsworth thing and smashing into with tackles and set pieces and all this sort of stuff early on. I think we might be under a little bit of pressure early on. I think they're going to do all the set piece things, and then we're going to get into a rhythm, get the first goal, and then go on to win. I'm gonna say reasonably, in the end, a comfortable 2-0 win, I reckon.
I don't say this because I think similar teams or whatever, but I see this going a bit like the Rotherham game, in which, although it's a closer looking result, I just think we're still gonna win, but I don't see it being a rout. And I think it'll be a case of us having just a little bit more quality than they've got. And again, it's going to be a typical Gareth Ainsworth style game. I'm sure they're going to slow it down and all the rest of it. But I just think that we've got better players than they've got, and we more often than not we do work hard or as hard as the opposition, and we have got the odd stinker in us and the odd off day, I know, but I just think we've got a bit of momentum at the minute, and I think this is one we'll win, and it could be a really big result for us. This, if we can go there and get like 2 or 3 goals and another 3 points on the road, it's just continuing that momentum we've already built up from the Southampton game. And I just fancy us in this one to win in the end fairly comfortably without getting too carried away. And that, I think they're going to compete, but ultimately not have enough to match us up.
So you're not going to go for another 5-0 win then?
No. But that would be nice.
It's, as I said earlier, I think it's going to be about us, how we break them down when they just sit in, when they dig in on the edge of the box.
Mm-hmm.
whether we can, off one of their set pieces or something like that, catch them on the break. I mean, I think that's going to be the trick, because I don't think we'll get much joy if, we build up slowly and they get into position, because that's what Ainsworth does. He organises his team when they haven't got the ball, because they've hardly ever got the ball. I mean, we talked about the possession stats earlier on. They've hardly ever got the ball. So he has a shape when they're out of possession. So if we kind of march slowly up the pitch with the ball, I'm not sure we'll get much joy. But if we try and catch them on the, when they've actually come up for a set piece or the corner or something like that, a bit like we did with Southampton earlier on, when we caught them a couple of times on the break. And if we can do that and get an opening goal, I think it's going to be a little bit more comfortable. Like I said, I'm not going to get carried away either. I think a 2-0 win, but without, as long as we get that first goal. But the problem is, if they get the opening goal, as I said earlier, they're the type of team that will just sit on it. They'll just go, brilliant, we've got a lead. Everybody dig in, edge of the box. They won't care about having shots or chances after that. That'll be it. So we just need that first goal.
Yeah, his Wickham team used to like to play man for man. I'm interested to see if this team's the same, because not many teams do that now, do they? Marking man for man. Just basically, you have a man, you follow him around the pitch. But that can be horrible to play against. If if they camp in and playing man for man, it can be difficult.
Well, I'd love to see Jack Colback trying to keep up with Bellingham. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, or Ekwa or Neil. That's the other thing, we've got players who are in form going into this game. And if we find it difficult to break them down, we know that Ekwa knows how to shoot now, which is nice, and all the rest of it. So, I think it's going to be one of those games where it might be a little bit tough to watch at times, but in the end, Sunderland's quality will shine through, and it might be the introduction of some new players from the bench. It would be great if someone like Burstow or Rusyn or somebody like that could come off the bench and change the game for us and win it.
All right then. Well, here's one. We talked about the start 11. One thing we haven't done, because we've got these new signings. Who gets a place on the bench for you then? And who comes off?
Like I say, that's without knowing, I tried to do this earlier and it was almost impossible, because I've got the squad sheet in front of us and I've got all the moving parts and all the rest of it. But we've got Bishop is obviously going to be the first name on the sheet there because he's the backup keeper. So Bishop will be on the bench. Then you're looking at Huggins. There's the second one. Triantis and Sealt have both made the bench recently, but Triantis has been away on international duty, and I don't know when he's due back and where he is in the world and all the rest of it. So again, it just depends on that. But let's just presume he's back. Them two probably get on there. We have no central midfield players to pick from, so that makes that bit easy. I don't know how fit Oshish is. I don't think he's played much, so he might not be trusted on the bench yet. I'm thinking he might well be a couple of weeks off still before he's involved. But I imagine Patrick Roberts, if he doesn't start, will be on the bench. So there's the fifth one. Alex Pritchard's got to be on the bench. That's the sixth one. Then it gets tough. If Bennett is back and
assume he is,
he's got to be on there. Rig the same.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at this. Then we've got three strikers: Burstow, Rusyn, Himia. And Burstow will be on there, I'm sure. And then you're looking at Rusyn and Himia, probably Himia. Just judging up because Rusyn hasn't played any football really since the end of last season, I don't think. I think that's the other thing, is we don't know how fit some of these players are. He's been left in limbo for a good few weeks now in terms of the mess on that he's had to get over here. And I don't think we'll just throw them on the bench. I think they'll be in the matchday squad, but they probably won't be amongst the subs. It's just tough. Without knowing really a lot of the details on the players and how they are and how fit they are, it's tough to say. But even then, I've probably just reeled off like 13, 14 names. And then there's players I've missed, like Johnson, who's been making the bench, and Ellis Taylor, who's been making the bench. And so, we've got lots of players to pick from.
Yeah, getting proper splinters in your arse sitting on the fence there, not kind of calling it out. But you called it there when you said if you take Amir off the bench, that's going to be a massive blow to him. If he's fully fit and one of them new signings just slots straight in who maybe not kind of fully match fit. And it's one of those decisions I was talking about earlier that Mowbray has got to get right, and he's got to pitch it so he really doesn't lose some of these players, because Like I say, they were, they might have come from the bench, but they played their part in a 5-0 win. So he's got. It'll be as much as we're assuming it's the starting 11. It's going to be as interesting to see who's on the bench.
Yep. Well, we will see on Saturday, I suppose, when he names the team and all the rest of it. But it is nice to have that problem now. I'm not going to lie. I love the fact we've got options, and I think that's been one of the best things about the transfer window is that we just came out of it with so much depth now, and we've still got players to come back as well. Don't forget, we've got Elise, we've got Matete over the next month or two, hopefully back involved, and then Evans in the new year, and then it'll be January again, and we'll be looking at the squad and thinking, right, where can we get players out on loan? Where can we make additions? And it's just an exciting time, and I think that's, again, like I said before, just having that competition for places is fantastic, and let's just hope it's seen as a positive from everyone. I mean, the players who've arrived have obviously known what they're walking into, and that's the other thing, that it puts everyone on a level playing field to a degree. Obviously, a couple of people have got safe places, but otherwise, it's a case of if you don't perform, there's somebody waiting to come in beneath you, and that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and the other thing to take into account as well is Mowbray will be looking ahead. You're talking about these players building up fitness. I mean, we've got a game on Wednesday, so Mowbray will be thinking, if they're there or thereabouts, he might just hold them back those extra few days and say, right, well, I'll give these lads another go now, see what happens, and then we've got Wednesday if he thinks he needs to change it up.
Yeah, well, busy few days for us, busy few days for Sunderland, and we'll be back in the aftermath of the match with a review show. So make sure you join us back for that. Also, make sure you pre-order our book. I'm going to keep plugging this to death. But yes, you can now pre-order SAFC 365 from the I Love Supreme merch shop. So make sure you head over there, pre-order the book. It's out in October, hopefully. It only costs you £10. All the profit goes to Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. And in exchange, you get a brilliant book, mostly put together by the other man on this podcast, Chris. So do us all a favour. Make sure you pre-order that book and you'll get yourself a nice bit of merch in October. Yeah, cheers, Chris. Thanks as always, mate.
No worries. I've got myself nervous because I've tipped us to win. I'm nervous now.
Yeah, well, I always tip us to win, don't I? It's kind of me thing now. Cheers to listeners, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you back after the game.